Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Cybersecurity Recruiter Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Erin. How you doing?
Good, you?
I'm good. For everyone listening, me and Erin we've been planning this episode for about a year, haven't we? And I think it was
Yeah.
probably largely my fault that it's taken so long. So,
No, yeah,
I'm
don't
sorry.
worry about it. We get busy, things happen, it's totally fine.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I know you've been busy, Erin. We were just chatting before we hit record there. I know you've been publishing some kids' books that we've talked about, and I know you've been navigating a rocky market yourself. And I think you could
Mhm.
probably advise some of the listeners on key learnings and key takeaways you've had from the last year or so, which I think will help a lot of people. But I'll start where I always start, which is I'll do you a bit of an intro. So for the listeners that don't know you, Erin Santamaria started off back in the day in recruitment and as a human resources generalist. That was at MSC Mediterranean Shipping Company.
Yeah.
You then went on to be a business intelligence and data analytics recruiter, and that was for Wayfair. You were then a recruiter for Meta, and you were with Meta for around 3.5 years, which I bet was a great experience. And then more recently, you've been a talent acquisition specialist for your own consulting company doing contracting work. And right now, you are with the Royal Bank of Canada as a recruitment specialist. So, Erin, welcome to
Yeah,
the show.
thank you. It's nice to be here.
Nice to have you on. But yeah, I've done you a bit of an intro, Erin. It'd be nice to hear what you've been up to. I never think I can do your intro as well as you can. So if you want to tell us who you are, what you've been up to, what you're
Sure.
up to right now, and yeah, what's going on?
Yeah, so originally I'm from Montreal, Canada, so Canadian living in the United States. When I was at MSC in Canada, I was doing like all human resources, recruitment, and lots of all the other stuff like benefits, specialism, and all that stuff. I actually came to Boston to visit a friend who moved here and then fell in love with my husband, met him at a bar. He couldn't pronounce the R's, and then here you are. I moved to the United States. When I moved over, I couldn't really do HR as a whole in the US because I hadn't studied it for the United States. I fell into just solely recruiting, and that's when I went over to Wayfair. And at Wayfair, I went from being the one recruiter of a whole company to one of hundreds of recruiters. So it was a really
Hmm.
different experience. And I really liked it. I got to hire lots of cool people in business intelligence, all different levels. And then that's when I got hit up by Facebook to come and interview. They wrote to me on LinkedIn, which I feel like back in the day, everyone would get messages from recruiters and I never get them anymore. So you could tell the market's not that great. But yeah, I moved over to Facebook. I couldn't even believe it. Like I never thought I'd get an offer from Facebook. It was like I was blown away by it. And I loved every minute of it. I had such a great time. I made such amazing friends. And then March 2023, we all got that email
Hmm.
that a good portion of the recruiters were laid off. We knew it was coming. We had a feeling, but
Hmm.
no hard feelings. Business is business. It's just been a really rough ride since then. I'm sure for many
Hmm.
people, like on LinkedIn that I've seen, so many people
Hmm.
have been laid off. And then since then, I've had a contract with Pfizer. It's like a fintech company, not Pfizer, the needle. It's like
Yeah.
a
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
FISERD. So I did a 6 month contract there. Couldn't get extended because they were going back on site, and I don't live in New York, New Jersey. Then moved over. I did a little bit of recruiting for a tech startup called Stack AV. It's like an autonomous vehicle company, but for trucking. And then they paused recruiting. And then I fell into getting a little recruiting gig at RBC, Royal Bank of
Hmm.
Canada. So that's like my career progression since the wonderful layoff.
Yeah,
But
cool. No, there's a lot to unpack there. It will be nice to hear a few things. It'll be nice to hear how you handled the layoff and what you've done since and how you've bounced back. I know you're always really positive. I can remember when we spoke even last year, it was a little bit rawer
it's
than it is
hard,
now.
but
Yeah, but
Yeah.
you were still in a good frame of mind, and you were still making plans to move forward. You weren't just sat there complaining or sulking about it. You were pretty upbeat, which I know a lot of recruiters are because we have to be. It's quite a mentally testing job. But yeah, it'd be nice to hear about that, and also it'd be nice to hear about what goes down at Meta or Facebook in terms of recruiting, and perhaps there's some insights you can give us there in terms of what you saw and how that could help listeners that are potentially applying for big tech or any jobs for that matter. But we'll start off with the layoff, if that's okay, Erin, because I
Yeah,
know there's
that's
a
fine.
lot of awesome, genuinely, there's some really good people that have been
Mhm.
laid off and caught up in them. It's like, how did you handle it? How did you bounce back? Has the contracting element, has that been a big kind of help for you? Have you got any advice for any listeners
Yeah.
out there that have gone through a similar thing or are going through one now?
We knew it was coming, so we all got that email at like 5:30 or 6 a.m., and we were texting each other, and we were devastated. We knew we were okay, though. They gave us a good severance package. They
Mm,
paid us for a couple months after, so we
mm,
were set up. I was actually really grateful for how they took care of us as employees getting laid off. And I guess I thought to myself, okay, I worked at Facebook. I'll get a job. It's going to be easy. It's hard to get into Facebook. That didn't happen. Once I was allowed to start applying, because once you're like on a severance, you can't apply right away to other companies, because I was on their payroll for a couple more months. So once I was finished that and I started to really get into applying, I had started like an Excel spreadsheet, putting the companies, the salaries just to see. And then I wasn't getting any callbacks, nothing. Like by the hundreds. I was sending like 20, 30 a day. And it was starting to get like depressing. Oh my
mm,
God, I'm not getting anything. And I'm sure a lot of people too. Like I just bought my house with my husband. Like we got a bigger house based on like my meta salary.
mm,
And this was months prior, so I was starting to get nervous. Oh my God, am I going to have to sell my house? Like all those kinds of questions start to give you really bad anxiety. So I
mm,
started feeling nervous, not being the same person that I felt I was. And then I started reading a lot of books. I think I told you that. Reading
mm,
books to help me see things differently, try to be a happier version of myself. Because at the same time, you're trying to save money. And I didn't want to be paying $200 an hour for therapy or something at the time. But it was honestly just, I think the biggest thing I realized from all of this is try to find like hobbies maybe on the side that you can do that you could get some income from, because I just started to feel like I was relying on other people to pay me, which is what it is when you work for a company, but it was like unsettling to me. You know what I
mm,
mean? That's why I got into the kids books. I was like, what's something I can do that could be replaced by artificial intelligence, because everything's getting replaced by it. But I figured I do like to draw. I like to do cartoons, and I drew one of the books. And I figured, you know what? Nothing AI can compete, but nothing compares to like a real illustrated book as opposed to like the
mm,
AI graphics. So that's
mm.
where I fell into something else. So sometimes I actually say to myself that meta layoff is like a blessing in disguise. It was
Yeah,
like
yeah.
felt like the hardest thing that happened to me, but one of the best, because I learned something new about myself. People can learn
Yeah,
too, because it's
yeah,
tough.
it is, Erin, and I'm a believer that everything happens for a reason as well. So yeah, I do think that's happened. The bit I want to talk about, Erin, is that bit where you got laid off, mortgage with the husband and stuff like that.
Mhm.
There'll be a lot of people listening now, and I know from messages I get on LinkedIn, everyone thinks as a cybersecurity headhunter that I can help everyone on the candidate side. The reality
Yes.
is I'm getting instructed by my clients to go out and find and headhunt a
Mhm.
very small section of the market. So the reality is there's very few people on the candidate side that I can help. It's a very small percentage of people in the grand scheme of things. So I like to talk about it on the pod to try and help out as much on the show because I can't help out in my day job. So you've obviously from that point of getting laid off, you've come back though and you've had multiple gigs, you're doing well now, you've got a gig with Royal Bank of Canada. So how do you go from that point of feeling anxious and shit, what do I do,
Mhm.
to where you are now? How do you move forward? What were the steps?
It's funny when you say it, because there was a point when I was like super negative and in my own head, and like constantly refreshing LinkedIn for new jobs, and that's when
Mm,
nothing was happening. And it's like the art of letting go, or the concept. Like, I just, at one point, I let go. I was like, okay, I'm not going on LinkedIn for 2 weeks. I didn't go on LinkedIn for 2 weeks. I'm not applying to one job for 2 weeks. Okay. I had to stop because it was constantly on my mind. I didn't check my email, which probably sounds terrible because I could have missed an opportunity, but I just wanted to take like a mental break. And then when I got there, like when I went back on, that's when someone reached out to me. It was like, oh, there's an autonomous vehicle company. They're looking for recruiters. Are you interested? It was like a 2 month contract. And I was like, sure. And that came to me. Then I remember I was working at that contract, and then Royal Bank of Canada reached out to me. It was weird how it all happened at the same time, and perfect timing because my contract ended with the startup, and then I started doing the contract with the bank. So it was like I just had to like mentally let go. And have you ever heard of the author? His name's Neville Goddard. A bunch of books and like philosophies, and he always says like he calls it the law of, I think it's called the law of assumption. And I sound crazy, but it would be like, assume you have already what you want. And that's what I was doing. I was like, okay, if I have a job, I'm not going to be spending all day on LinkedIn. I'm going to be busy working or whatever. So that's what I did, and it worked, which was weird. I'm still not a full-time employee, and that's still hard. I really do want to be like full-time, but the struggle that I had for a long time kind of went away, and I'm getting a nice mental break from it at least.
Yeah.
That's
Do
what
you know
I
what?
did.
Yeah, I really like that. And I've heard before, like I've heard people say, and I think this is probably what you're talking about with that author. I've heard
I
people say
think
that when you,
Neville Goddard. I don't want to say
okay,
the wrong name.
okay, cool, yeah. When you push harder and harder, you can create like resistance and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
that's what you're talking about. So you just chilled, let it happen, didn't force it. And I think that's true. I notice it at the minute on LinkedIn on the candidate side, like some people they are just bombarding me, and it is too much. And you do get back to them, but
Yeah.
if people are just hitting you up too hard, you want to help, but it's come on, man, give us a break. And I think that's probably what you're talking about. If you kind of let it kind of happens now, feel better in yourself, and that's when you got some results.
It's like I just stepped away and I just let go. And then
Mhm.
2 opportunities came to me. And it was like, oh,
Mm.
okay. But
Mm.
another thing that I did, and I don't know if for job seekers, it was actually really helpful. I had to get out of my comfort zone a bit. Okay. Like even
Mhm.
doing this
Mhm.
is out of my comfort zone.
Mhm.
And there was this group on LinkedIn. I don't know if you've seen, it's called Never Search Alone.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard of it. So I don't know how I found it. I think someone had gotten laid off, and I was looking at the comments, and someone wrote, join this group, Never Search Alone. And what it is really is it's a bunch of people in the tech industry or corporate
Okay.
world who have gotten laid off and can't find a job. And then
Okay.
you get paired up and do weekly meetings with different people. So it's for networking purposes. But I actually joined that too, and that helped a
Mm.
lot. Like mindset wise, I made some like good friends
Mm.
from that.
So never search alone, yeah.
Never search alone.
Cool.
It
Cool.
yeah, it's a cool concept.
Yeah. Yeah. So did they give you any kind of practical tips for applying, or was it all more networking and just mindset stuff, or bit of
It was
both?
more, how do I explain? You have to, okay, so there's like a book online that you buy. It
Okay.
sounds weird, but we had to do exercises like with the group. So one of
Mhm.
them, for example, I forget what it was. It was like you had to write your dream job. Like what, but realistically, like what's your dream job? Is it hybrid? Is it remote? Like you had to list out your non-negotiables, and we had to talk about it. And then we had to tailor our resumes to that. It was just like an
Okay.
experience to make you see what you want and believe that even though whatever's out there right now, you can get it. And also, too, networking's a really good thing because I'll tell you the three roles that I've had, three contract roles that I've had since my layoff, have not one of them have been from me just applying. Not one. They've been
Okay.
from knowing someone.
Yeah.
So that kind of gives you the opportunity to meet people. And one of them, she's my friend now. She was laid off at Google, and like we keep in touch. And I have another one, she was at Charles Schwab, and then she gave me a contact, and we talked about it.
Mm.
Just, you meet different people different ways. So
You do.
yeah.
do. Do you know what I think as well, Erin? I think that knowing someone is becoming more and more important because in like with AI and
Really.
automation, it's so easy to apply for a job. People can apply for hundreds of jobs a week. Whereas if someone does know you, it shouldn't matter, but it massively does, and it makes a huge difference. And it's so
Yeah.
interesting to hear that none of the last
Right.
three, that's what have all been down to people. And I can relate that to what I do on a day-to-day basis. Everything is about who I know and network and leveraging
Yeah.
relationships and stuff like that.
I mean, you still have to go through the process and stuff. It's not like
Mm.
I cut corners or anything. It's just more like, I know this person, I worked with them, they're reliable, here's their resume. You know what I
Yep.
mean? That's something
Mm.
that like I learned because you have to really make those connections, and I didn't before, and I'm focused on
Yeah.
that more now.
Yeah, I'll give you a real life example. I won't name the client or the candidate, but there was an example of this recently. They were up in the air about whether they were going to move forward and interview this particular candidate, and there was a mutual connection there. And straight away, they went bang, we'll do the interview.
Oh.
And this particular candidate progressed quite far. She didn't actually get the role in the end for one reason or the other. But again, it's an example of how, because there was that mutual connection there, the network, the relationship, it enabled that person to move
Trust.
forward in the
Yeah,
process. Yeah, yeah,
exactly. And you
yeah,
have trust from people and
yeah,
real
yeah,
word of mouth.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that definitely helps for
yeah, definitely.
for finding a job. Yeah.
Just going back to this Never Search Alone group, it actually sounds to me like there was some like networking benefits, some benefits in terms of keeping your mindset strong and mentally strong, but also there's some practical stuff there. So so the first thing they did was got you to write your dream job. The second thing they got you to do was tailor your resume. And I think this is a massive thing because I see people on LinkedIn and they'll put a post out, and I feel bad for them, but they'll put a post out and they say, I've applied for 500 jobs and I've heard nothing back. And I sit there and I think, okay, that's bad. But I also think, have you tailored your resume? There's no way those 500 outreaches were all personalized. There's no way they were all followed up with a hiring manager with a personal note. And it's almost slow down to speed up and actually think about what you want. Like in this case, your dream
Yeah.
job. I think it makes a difference, doesn't it?
It does. It was just like a good environment, and we were able to, like, an example, I want to post something on my LinkedIn, and we would read it. Okay, yeah, that sounds good. We'd give our opinions. It's when you're not biased by like friends or family and you come together, and we actually became like really good friends. Like we at one point, most of us, I think all of us had a role and one person didn't. We were still meeting with her, and then like a really good network of people that are going through something you're going through. Not a lot of my friends are in like the tech industry that got laid off. So I can't really relate it to many of my own friends. So when I talk to them, I felt like I'm not alone. Like it's nothing wrong with me. It's just the market. It's not my job, my work, or so check it out if you're looking for, if people who are listening or just want to try to see ways to meet other people that are going through the same thing and talk to them and network.
Yeah, no, cool. I think in the remote world as well, I think that's massive because back in the old days when we're in the office, you probably got a lot of what you're talking about by going for a drink after work or going for a coffee
Yeah.
at lunchtime. Whereas those days are largely gone now. So I think it makes a
Yeah, it's
it makes it
true.
makes it makes a big difference. Erin, on the let's talk about Meta and Facebook. Like I can imagine 3.5 years there as a recruiter. I bet there's a few stories. I bet you learned a lot. I bet there was some highs, some lows. What was it like working there? What did you learn from being a recruiter? How did you get hired there? What were the do's and don'ts for the applicant side? What went down?
Yeah. So someone reached out to me on LinkedIn one day and I was like, get out. Like, first of all, people work at Facebook. Like, I don't know. And then, like, when you think it's just like a website, but I knew people worked there, but it was just, wow. I don't think I'd ever get an offer there, but I'll try. And I did the interview, and I remember it was on video. It was before I could do it on video. It was like 3 different sections, and one of them I thought I bombed. Like, I thought I did terribly. I was, like, shaking. The other 2, I think I did well. And then I ended up getting an offer. I think it was over a week, though. I hadn't heard from them, and I was like, "Oh, I didn't get it." But then I got it, and they were like, "Yeah, we do onboarding in Menlo Park, California, so you get to go there." And I was like, "This is so cool." It was, like, surreal, you know? But I did love it. I think what I loved the most about the role is, so I was a sourcer. Like, we say, you know what that is because 'cause you're a
Yeah.
recruiter, but a lot of people don't know what that is who aren't in recruiting. So I was a sourcer there. I love sourcing. And what I did was I had to hire for like different engineering roles, but I didn't look at inbound candidates. That wasn't my role. I had to search for people. But what I loved about this is had to get creative because there are so many recruiters, and the way it works with a lot of big tech companies is like if you pull up someone on LinkedIn, let's say, and it can show like the Facebook recruiting extension, it'll say who the recruiter is that owns it, that you can't
Okay.
write to that person. So you had
Okay.
to get creative with finding people that were good that weren't at like Netflix and Amazon and Google because they were already taken. So that was the fun part. Like I remember hosting, I had to get approval and everything on Clubhouse. I don't know if you've ever heard of the app Clubhouse.
Yes, I have. Yeah, there was like a
Yes.
real rave about that a few years ago.
Yes,
Like,
I haven't heard much about it. Some
yeah.
hiring rooms there. So I would talk and be like, I'm looking for this. And people would like listen and then they would add me on LinkedIn. I'd have to find different ways to find people that were qualified enough to do well on the interviews because they're hard that weren't at Google. And so it was just fun. It was like a constant hunt and I loved it. It was a really great company. I had a really great time working there. Like
Yeah.
seriously, it was awesome.
So you were sourcing and doing the outbound stuff. Did you get involved with the general application channels, or were you just solely on the
I was
sourcing side
solely on
hitting?
the sourcing. Like I could look people up if they said, "Oh, I did apply," but I didn't have a specific requisition that was assigned to me. It was more like, okay, we need AR VR engineers with like 5 to 10 years of experience, or we need. It was just like that. Go, and it
Okay,
was
cool.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Did they give good training there and stuff?
Oh yeah, for recruiting, or you mean like just in general?
Yeah. I'd be interested to hear your own experience. Yeah, on the recruiting side.
Yeah, so the first
Mm.
week, like for every employee, like recruiter, anything, like engineer, I don't know if they do that anymore because I'm not there anymore and it's COVID and everything, but they fly you out to Menlo Park, California, their head office, and you do 2 days of orientation with everybody. It was so fun.
Mm.
And then you break out into your teams. So, like, recruiting went in one room, like, there was like 300 people. So they had to break it out, get to know people on your team, but in different towns. Like I was
Mm.
with a few people from Boston, some were from San Francisco, and then they started the training there and it was actually really good. We had our laptops given to us so we could actually like practice live with them while they were showing us things like how to use the system. So I would say that first week was mainly learning the systems. And then when you actually go to the office and start your job, there was a lot of shadowing. So we would listen to other recruiters do interviews so we could hear how they do them. And yeah, so no, the training was really great. I think it was more understanding the roles. I had never hired for an engineer in my whole life. That's why I was
Mm.
surprised I got the job because I never did engineering hiring before. I think it was more that I was really just trying to understand what they do and like the different stages of the life cycle of software development. So I was really like focusing on watching YouTube videos about it and learning all about
Mm.
that. And that's another point is a lot of the time at big tech companies, when you talk to a recruiter for the first round, that person isn't in your role. You have to, yeah, it's kind I had to learn it. Understand what does this person do, and it would be like they gave examples. Let's say WhatsApp doesn't work, stopped working. You need to get reliability engineers to fix it. Just to give an example so we could relate to people's experiences and stuff to see
Mm.
if they were a good fit or not.
And thanks. It sounds to me like a lot of this as well. Like you're talking about doing things on Clubhouse, you're talking about leveraging your network. Like you've really put yourself out there, and then you've got the rewards of that over the years. At times when you've probably needed them most, it's come back around really nicely. If I'm listening, thinking, yeah, do you know what? She's right. It would be great to do things like Clubhouse. It would be great to get out there and build more relationships, but I'm a bit nervous or I don't know how. Have you got any advice for people that are listening now that are thinking like that?
To join like a clubhouse and listen.
Yeah, just anything. It could be like joining the Never Search Alone thing. It could be doing an event on Clubhouse. That takes a
Yeah.
certain level of confidence. So how did you
And
kind
I've
of
never been there. I
mm,
swear. That's the thing.
mm,
I felt that's the thing I want even when I talk to candidates now and they just got laid off, I like talk to them. Listen, it's not a fun thing, but it could be the best thing for you because it pushes you. So
Mm,
joining Never Search Alone 2 years ago or a year ago, I would have been like, no, I'm not doing that. I don't have time for
mm,
that. I'd rather watch
mm,
Netflix. But I had to. I was desperate. I was like, I can't sit around here and mope. I need to do something that will bring me closer to what I want. And again, bringing it back to the law of assumption, assuming I have what I want, I kept trying to like use that. So I'd be like, okay, what does a person who has a really good job right now and good income, what do? They network. So I joined it and it was like I was nervous. I was like, what am I doing? I remember telling my husband, don't come in the room. I'm on this video with five strangers. And he was like, "Wait, what?" But I swear, once I did it, I felt good. Like you feel a reward after. I was like, they're so nice. And it just helped me. I didn't get a job from it. I'm not saying you'll meet them and get a job. It just puts you in that mental place. Like we were all there for each other. The day that they stopped doing hiring at the startup, I was so bummed out and I let them know. Within 30 minutes, they all got on video with me. They're like, it's okay. Like,
mm.
it's just it was a good experience. And I know it's hard to get out of your comfort zone sometimes and have to talk on the spot but honestly, we think it's more in our head than it is. We think people are wondering judging us, but we're just focusing on what we're saying, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that.
It was just a
Yeah,
good exercise to get out there and do it.
yeah, that's so true, and I've heard people that put a lot of video content out there and stuff say that before. Like they've looked back on some of their content and they know they felt horrendous that day or really tired or just got off
Mhm.
a flight and they've watched it back and they're like, God, I sound fine. I think at the time in your head, you're thinking,
Yeah.
you're over analyzing. And I think everyone's too busy thinking about themselves probably to care too much about what we're so it's
Exactly. That's one of the books, another book. I had to read so many books to get it. One of the book, I'm sure it's Dale Carnegie. What's it called?
mm,
How to
how to win
win
friends
friends
and influence
and
people.
influence
Yeah,
people.
yeah,
I read that one and I got that. It was like when you're talking to people, listen to them. Stop trying to be like,
mm,
"Oh, let me talk," which is
yeah.
probably what I'm doing right now in this conversation. But it's just it made you realize like people are focused on themselves. So just go in
Yeah,
and enjoy it. Like it's all in the head. That's really what I've learned and try to tackle.
it is. And I think sometimes you've just got to step out there and you've just got to step out there and do it. And I think sometimes as well, I just think people focus too much on the end result. If I relate it to applying for jobs, like everyone just wants to go in there and do the bare minimum. And I get it. They just want to get an interview and get a job. And I think if you take
Yeah.
a longer term approach and focus on the process and let's say going back to your networking stuff, I've had it, Erin, where sometimes you have a conversation and like me and you are doing now, it's I'm not doing this because you're going to give something to me and you're not doing it for me because we're actually just networking and having a chat and
Yeah.
building a relationship. And who knows, we might end up doing some business together in 3 or 4 years' time, or we might not. But
Yeah.
yeah, we're not really bothered. But we're just being nice and being genuine and being authentic. And I think that's when good things start to happen. When you're trying to force it, that doesn't. And I've even had it
Mhm.
before with. I can think of one client I've got in particular who's one of my best clients ever. And when I first met him, he actually said to me, Tom, are you sure you want to keep talking to me? Because this is a terrible ROI on your time. That's exactly what he said to me. And he ended up being one of my best clients ever. Because
Aw.
at first he wasn't hiring anyone. I was just trying to help out and I was just advising him and
Yeah.
telling him how to build and structure the team. And if you go, I think the point I'm trying to make is if you go in with the end goal in mind too quickly,
Mhm.
I think you start to take shortcuts. You start to miss out on building
Yes.
relationships that you couldn't have built, and you don't move forward in the way that you want to.
And you're full of anxiety. And
Yeah.
it's so hard. It's so easy to say it because I struggle with it all the time. But I feel like I was doing interviews, okay? Like a lot of the times I was doing interviews, like me getting interviewed, and I never got callbacks or any,
Mm.
and it happened. I didn't get the job. And I think what I had to start to do was, okay, what did I learn from that interview? And I would write down where I felt short. Oh, yeah,
Mm.
I felt I shouldn't have answered like that. If anything, I was trying to change my perspective while I was interviewing to take each interview that didn't go through as a gift. So instead
Mm.
of being like, oh, great, here, I'm going to sign in and bomb this interview, I would think, okay, let's see how I can improve my interview skills. Like that's how I had to switch my perspective and be more present in the moment and
Mm,
not focus on
mm.
saying the right thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well, like what you've done there is you haven't just been like a victim or blame someone. You've gone, okay, maybe they are getting back to me, maybe they're not, but what can I do about it to improve on the next round? What can I do better?
Mhm.
And you've self-analyzed and self-assessed and refined and improved and gone from there. It's the right thing to do, but you're right. It is easy just to fall into that trap of getting
Yeah,
annoyed, blaming other
really
people, saying it's not fair, saying it's not right. But
is. Mhm.
the sooner people realize that life isn't fair, probably the better, because it's really not.
Yeah, I get it. Like when you're getting to a point where like unemployment's running out and how am I going to pay my mortgage? And it's scary and
Mm,
it's you
mm.
can't be your real self under those conditions. So that's why the layoff was probably one of the best things to happen to me. I learned to meditate. I had to meditate. I had to learn how to do it. I still can't do it that well, but it helps. It makes you just silence your mind for a bit and start over. Because if you're not okay in here, whether you're looking for a job or a partner or whatever, like it's just not going to work out the way you
Mm,
want it until
mm.
you're okay and take things calmly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And the meditating. Sometimes I'm great with meditation. Like I'll be on it, I'll do it every night, and then I'll just fall. I've not done it for ages now, and I really should
Yeah,
get back
it's
on it. But
hard to do it.
it is. But you know what? I think everyone thinks they're bad. But even if you do 5 minutes and 10 seconds, you're actually doing it. That's still actually meant to be really beneficial. So I think you've got to,
Mhm.
even if it's like a tiny bit that you can zone out for,
Yeah. I
that's
was
still good.
doing YouTube videos, like 5-minute ones, and then they got boring. So sometimes I just put on like a Spotify, I'll put like high vibration frequencies. If
Mm,
let's say in the morning, if I have a busy day and I want to make sure I'm like in a good mindset, I'll do that and I'll just listen to it, but try to not like every time a thought comes to my head, I try to just let it pass. But it's
mm.
hard. Yeah, it's really tough. I had to delete my TikTok and my Instagram for a bit just to get out of the scrolling mode so I could focus.
Yeah, good. Listen, I don't do the only social media I do is LinkedIn, and I think
Okay.
LinkedIn takes enough of my time up for all the right reasons. But yeah, if I was on
For sure.
TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, I don't or Meta, I don't think I'd get anything done.
Oh, it's true. I had to delete it. I get it back here and there, but yeah, it's all of that. You have to
Mm,
clear your mind to do well in the job market right now. It's just way
mm.
too tough.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So at your current position, Aaron, with Royal Bank of Canada, what's day to day like there? What are you up to on the recruiting side
Yeah.
with that position?
That one, it's a Canadian company, but they're hiring lots of roles in the United States as well. So that's why they brought us on board. I'm actually me and a friend of mine from Meta. We actually worked the contract together at Pfizer, and now we're together at Meta,
Ah, very good.
and we're recruiting. Yeah, and I mean I'm on a contract till June. They have a lot of roles coming out. Hopefully, if they have more, I could get extended. But different, honestly, all different kinds. I was doing some
Mm,
site reliability engineering, but that one kind of moved over because we're that was in. I was actually focusing on Canada for that one, but doing a lot of finance and I never did finance before. So it's
mm,
different. It's tough to
mm,
understand sometimes,
mm.
but lots of finance roles. So like accountant, it's another one I like compliance, regulatory compliance, that kind of
Okay,
stuff.
okay,
Very
cool. And
different from what I've done before,
yeah,
ever, really. But
Erin, is there anything that's happened? Is this people applying to the bank, or is this you doing outreach
yeah,
again?
this is more people applying. I try to do some outreach, but I have a lot of different roles so that I don't have as much time. It's like a completely different recruiting role than what I was doing at Meta.
Okay,
Meta
no,
was
I'm
more
glad.
pipeline, if that makes
Yeah, yeah,
sense.
no, I'm glad you've said that. So basically, everything's inbound. So when you go, what makes you go to a candidate? What makes you give that person an interview, or how does that person grab your attention, basically?
Pretty much. Now, it kind of goes back to what I mentioned before for every role, really. If it's a big company, the recruiters are usually not the one. The first time you talk to a recruiter, that's usually the first round.
Mm,
They're not the one that's in your role.
mm,
So, what helps me is resumes that I understand, which kind of might not sound like the best thing to say, but again, I'm the recruiter. I've met with the manager. They've given me scenarios, examples of what this person would face, but I need to like look at the resume and be like, okay, there's all these keywords. If they want banking industry, they work at a bank. So I focus on that first, like where did they work? And with another helpful tip that I've seen that has helped me, which is because we get a lot of resumes that come in, a lot of applicants, and we don't have a lot of time. So we have to quickly look. And not quickly, but let's say I have 30 roles and I have 100 resumes in each one. So I need to see, okay, they're at a bank. Good. They need banking industry. I pretty much print it out or I put it on my notes, like the must haves or the qualifications, and then I cross reference. That's what I do. But again, because we're not in the role, I always tell candidates or people that I've talked to in the past who are looking to fix their resumes, try to write your resume in a way where the first person who looks at it is not in your role. So make it a little more obvious. I don't know how to explain that, if that makes sense.
It does. And do you know what? There's some stuff you've said there, and you said, oh, I don't think it matters. But I actually think it really does. Like you said, make it so you can understand it. And I think that's so important because even if I think of the most intricate, technical, hacking role that I recruit for as a cybersecurity recruiter, one of the key abilities that most employers look for is the ability to articulate yourself to non-technical people, because a lot of the times the people that are paying the bill, if they work for a cybersecurity
Yes.
consultancy, the person that's paying the bill may well be non-technical. So I think an ability to explain things clearly on a resume will help in the early stages of an application process, but it also demonstrates that you've got the ability to articulate yourself to non-technical people, which is
Yes,
very
exactly.
valuable.
Like, I want to see the skills. Like if they want Python or whatever, I want to see that. Like usually those are the things I kind of check. Like we're scanning them at the beginning. When I do a pre-screen, that's when I want to see if they can talk technical to non-technical people. If I can't understand about a project you worked on, like where I have to ask you like 5 times to explain it, like it's happened and I'll be like, okay, well, what does that mean? And then some people are just so go with the flow and they'll be teaching it to me at the same time. So it's that kind of helps too. But obviously, there's junior roles where they don't need to be overly being able to talk about non-technical stuff to non-technical people, but that's where we bring in like tests. Like Facebook, they did coding tests and stuff like that. But I think like making your resume easy to correlate to the role helps like being selected, if that makes sense. I've even you know what I've even like suggested people do and they've done it? Like people that I've talked to that write me on LinkedIn, cuz sometimes I try to write back and they'll be like, take your resume, go into Chat GPT and say, make this resume understandable to a recruiter who like just started working at this company. Like use that perspective because recruiters want to run to the manager and show them good people. You know what I mean? That's like, I would think of what the first person that's looking at your resume, think of what that person's goal is. So my goal is to impress the manager, right? So that's how I would frame it, I guess, like to
Yeah.
candidates on that
Yeah,
side.
no, I think that's really valuable and I think that's really good. And I think sometimes that skill set is really underrated, or people think just because they can do the job and they're really technical, that piece doesn't matter, but it really does. And I see it more and more. So it
Yeah.
does. Also, and the other thing as well, just some figures just to emphasize for people listening. You mentioned there 30 live vacancies, 100 resumes across each one. Just for everyone listening, I know it's not overly complex maths, but that's 3,000 profiles that you're looking at. And just want, as recruiters, we get pretty used to these kind of volumes and this kind of like workload to manage. But I think on the candidate side, I don't think people quite realize. Like I can give you a really good example, Erin. So I did a post about some vacancies we've got live. Someone messaged me on Friday. Obviously, we've had the weekend, and I just haven't got round to. The candidate looks great, by the way, and I think he's going to be suitable for a couple of things we've got live. And he's messaged me again, going, "Were those fake job postings, and it's no, they weren't fake.
Yeah.
It's just like it is Tuesday, it was Friday night, and like I'm trying, and I've worked like 10 hours, 12 hours yesterday, and it's like people just I think people don't have any comprehension of just how many profiles we're dealing with. Sometimes it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, and I get it because it's easy to get ghosted. It's just we're so busy that sometimes we'll get back to you, but it's not that we forgot about you. We're just like have a checklist that we have to go look at. And I think I try to explain that to people, especially in that group Never Search Alone. I was the only recruiter and they asked me so many questions and I told them that. I'm like, I promise. Yes, it is rude when you've gone through the interview and you never hear anything from anyone again. But at the same time, it's easy to happen. Like, it's good to have a tracker. I'm using Workday right now, and it's a little helpful because it has everybody in like different stages and I can follow up. But sometimes some places don't even have trackers, or it can be easy. Or if you're not getting callbacks and stuff, it's just because there's so many that go in. I would say even if there's specific companies, I think they have on LinkedIn, you can get notified when a company posts something and try to get in there as soon as possible because I don't know, lately I've been noticing with Workday, it doesn't really populate it to who like matches it the most. It's just like first come, first serve. If I have 300, let's say, I'm going to go through like the first maybe 20 or 40 and then I'm going to my next role. You know what I mean? So try to get to the top as soon as you can.
Yeah, it does. It really does make sense. And I think a lot of people, I've had it before where people have, they've got my cell phone number and they've just rang me and I've gone, okay, great. And they've got me on the phone and it's done. Or I've had people before where they've emailed me, not like back to back, but they might have emailed me 3 or 4 times and given me like a polite and persistent nudge, and that kind of thing works. But yeah, it's just nice for people to hear it from a recruiter's side, because sometimes people might just think they're being ghosted, or they might just think that a recruiter's being awkward, but they're really not. It's like it is hard, and I'm sure you're the same, Aaron, but I work some crazy hours and it's still hard. It really is.
And I think sometimes, oh God, I got to get back to that person. I have to get back to them. But then something else happens. And then I'm like, if this was me, if I was a candidate, I'd be freaking out. Like, I get it because I've been a candidate. Like, I was a candidate for a long time last year. So I totally get it and understand. But I think like candidates just need to remember that they're not the only one that like is waiting for an answer. So it's not and it's not in a bad way. It's not about you that like, you're not good. It's just be patient and try to know that the person's probably overloaded with roles. And there's so many applicants right now applying to one role. So it's different.
No, definitely. Definitely. I know we've got a school run looming. We were chatting about it before we
a little one up at kindergarten.
So look, as we come to the end here, it's nice to see you and thanks for taking the time. So I know you mentioned you read, I'll just finish on this last question. So you read a lot of books and did a lot of self-development. What would maybe like your top recommendation be, or maybe your top 1 or 2 for people listening that could be most helpful?
So I think you asked me this last year, and I think it's still one of them, but I have another one. So it was at the time I had read the book Think and Grow Rich. Did you ever read that one?
I've read it. Yeah, it's good.
I loved it. I've read it twice. I'm probably going to read it again soon just to remind me. It really helps you get in that mindset that you need to be in. And it helped me realize, what do I like to do? And I do recruiting, but I also like doing kids books. So it gave me like a new passion. It introduced me to a new passion. And then another book that I read, I don't know if it's like popular. I don't even know if it's not, it should be. It's called Don't Believe Everything You Think by Joseph Nguyen. I think that's his name.
Okay.
Amazing. It's pretty much saying that there's a difference between thoughts and then a difference between thinking. Thoughts are good. Thinking is like you're suffering. Thinking is why you suffer. So it just makes you realize, oh, so when you're overthinking, it's, whoa, I don't know. It's hard to explain, but it really is a good book to read, especially if you're like a candidate in the job market that's like overanalyzing, overthinking, and just like in a mental hell. That book's really good. It's amazing.
Yeah, good. And what we'll do is we'll put the links in the show notes when we release it, so people can find those really easily.
Yeah, I got them on Amazon, so they're
okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Listen, thanks for your time. Nice to see you. Do you think we've about covered it? Do you think we've smashed it?
Yeah, I think we're good.
Thanks for your
All
time,
right.
and nice to
Thank
see you.
you.
Thanks, Erin. Thank you.